Okay, I'm going to get started shortly. Vicky will keep admitting people in for me. So hi everyone, welcome. My name's Helen Butler. I'm the Grants Programme Manager at GMCVO. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you through a little bit of an overview of the fund, and then I'll take you through some guidance for applying. And then we'll have a section at the end to ask any questions if anybody's got any questions. Um, if everybody could go on mute, that would be brilliant, just so that everyone can hear me, and that the recording also picks myself up. So yeah, welcome. Thank you for coming along and sparing some of your precious time to hear about our grants round. So my colleague Vicky's also on this call today, and Vicky's the grants officer, so she'll monitor the chat, but we will have time for questions at the end as well. So yeah, I will just go through a little bit of an overview of the fund. So the mental wellbeing grants are funded by the GM Integrated Care Partnership and administered by ourselves at GMCVO. So we're now in year 5 of the grants programme. And this year 5 will build on the success and learning of the previous 4 years. So the year 5 small grants, there's £75,000 available in total for between 20 and 25 projects, and you can ask for between 1,000 and 5,000. So in previous years, this round has been a closed round, and we've invited people who've had a previous year's small, micro or faith grant to apply. So the reason we opened it up this year was a mixture of reasons, really. We were really aware that there was some underrepresentation on the programme, and we were aware that some people had exceeded that income limit, so we had less application forms from those people. And we know that the sector has changed quite a lot over the past few years, and we thought we'd just try and do it differently and see how it goes. So there are impact reports online from year 3 and 4. So you can access those from the GMCVO website to see the kind of projects and the impact that it's had in the past. So participants must be from the target communities, which I'll go through later, and they must be GM residents, which can include Glossop. So in the previous 4 years, we've awarded around 275 grants in total. So looking to award another 20 to 25 in this small grants round. So I'll move on to the next slide. So the purpose of the mental wellbeing grants is to support people from communities of identity or experience that are based in Greater Manchester, which can include Glossop, that may struggle to achieve higher levels of mental wellbeing. So that's the basis for the fund, and the application form is built around your activity or your project trying to achieve that higher level of mental wellbeing. So on to the next slide. The application form as well is based around the 5 ways to wellbeing. So these are the principles of the New Economics Foundation. They developed these, and you can find more info out on the link, which we will send out the slides to you. So you'll be able to just click straight onto the link. But there is loads online about the 5 ways to wellbeing. But essentially, it's that these 5 different areas of activity are really evidenced and show that to be achieving those higher levels of mental well-being, people should be doing some of these things within their day, really. So your activity within the application form must do at least 3 of the 5. So the ways to wellbeing are give, keep learning, be active, take notice and connect. And I'll go through some examples later as how that can be worked into your application form. But really we'd be looking for just a clear description of your activity and how it will help people achieve this. So on to the next slide. So yeah, I mentioned the communities. So these are the communities that we'd be looking at you to be working with. So you've got carers, people from communities who have experienced racial inequality, people living with long-term physical or mental health conditions, people who identify as LGBTQ+, people experience socio-economic crisis, disabled people, military veterans, people who are unemployed, socially isolated older people. And a new one for this year is a focus on men's mental wellbeing as well. So in previous years of the mental wellbeing grants, the funding has supported all of the above communities in different areas of GM. So we've always had quite a good coverage of people, of activity and projects and organisations supporting those communities. However, we've found that men have been really underrepresented within the activities and the support provided. So we're really keen for organisations and community groups who do work with men to apply for the funding. That doesn't mean that if you don't work with men, you wouldn't be considered, because you absolutely would, because it's taking into consideration all of those communities. And also, we're aware that people come from multiple communities. They don't just fall into one of those communities that are listed. Next slide. So in terms of eligibility, you must be a constituted VCSE organisation operating in GM for the benefit of GM residents. So that includes community groups where you would need to have a constitution, and it would need to be signed, and it would need to have a dissolution clause. Charities, residents associations, and applications from CICs will be accepted as well, as long as you've got a minimum of 3 directors, a membership and an asset lock with a specified organisation named. Yeah, the rest of that, what's required for each one will be online when you select your organisation. So any additional documents like the Constitution, we will ask for at that point. You also need to have a bank account that requires 2 signatures, and it needs to be in the name of your organisation. So one of the main eligibility is that you need to have an income of 75,000 or less in the most recent full financial year. So the reason for this is that we're really keen for those smaller organisations with those low incomes, those community groups who we know are out there doing amazing work, to be able to apply and get funding. And often, because with a lot of grant funding, there is no income limit. We know that it becomes even more competitive when you've got professional bid writers or people that is their full-time job within larger organisations. And actually, because the grants are a fairly small amount as well, we also know that really benefits those smaller organisations, as well as knowing that you have the reach to work with these communities and know what they need. Sorry, I've just seen a note in the chat that says, can you explain the acronyms VCSE? So VCSE is the voluntary community or social enterprise sector. And GMCVO, we actually are just an acronym now. We are just GMCVO, but it used to stand for Greater Manchester Centre for Voluntary Organisations. So yeah, thank you for that, and sorry for not clarifying. Okay, so yeah, you'd have to have a safeguarding policy, which includes DBS checks if you're working with children under 18 or vulnerable adults. We're also looking for a commitment to monitor the project. So we will provide guidance, but we want to know what's going on in your project. So we want to know what's worked. We want to know what challenges you've had. We want to know what you'd do differently if you did it again. And it just really helps to feed into the ICP, the Integrated Care Partnership, when they're looking at what works in communities and what community groups can deliver, but also what impact that has on the residents of GM. Yeah, next slide. So I'm going to go straight into the application form and give you some guidance on what we're really looking for when we're asking these questions. So these slides will be shared, but I do realise that I'll probably say more words than there are on the slides. But the words that I am saying is all written down, and it's in a guidance document that is also on the website. So we can send all the links in the email when we send out the slides. So if there is anything that you want to look back at or read back at as you're doing your application form, you will be able to. So the first question is telling us what your project is, including how, when and where the project will be delivered. So in your answer, we're really looking for a focus on clear and to the point descriptions of the activity that you're going to be delivering with this funding. So although the word counts are there, don't feel that you have to use the full amount. It's just a roundabout figure. So for this one, it's a 400 word count, but you wouldn't require, if you don't require 400 words, then you don't need to write 400 words. However, just ensure that there is enough information for us to understand what you want to deliver. So think about when, with all of the questions really, the panel is made up of a mixture of people who may not know your organisation or your background or what you deliver. So when we're talking about this project, it needs to be really specific to what you're delivering this project, and enough information so that we know what you're delivering. So looking at how it will be delivered, when will delivery take place? So we're thinking of a project, it has a start and an end date, and it's got delivery in between. What are your key delivery dates and what is actually taking place? And also you could add where the project's taking place. We'd also be looking that anything that you mention in here would link to your costs. So your budget in question 9, it must cross-reference to this question. So if you've mentioned something in your budget, it must be mentioned here. For example, if you've got a budget, a breakdown with your costs for craft material, then something to do with craft must be mentioned in question 1. So we can fund equipment, but it'd need to be part of the project and relate to the project. And we can fund staffing costs that are reasonable, but we couldn't fund a new post or employment overheads because it isn't sustainable. The funding ends, it's a small amount of funding and it ends, your project would have to end by May 2025. So it wouldn't be sustainable to employ or for overheads. Okay, next question. Question, this is for anybody who's had a previous mental wellbeing grant. So it's a yes, no. If you have, yes. If you haven't, no. And then it's just explaining how your project builds on any learning from your previous grant. So if your project's similar or based on the previous grant, just think about the challenges in the previous delivery, anything that you thought at the time or that people fed back, oh, this would have been great if we'd have done that. Yeah, so within your application form, just build on that learning and incorporate it within your new project. I'm going to go on to the next question. Question 3. So please explain how you know your project's needed and how you've designed the project with the communities you'll support. So this question really is kind of looking at your activity might sound amazing, but if it's not what your community needs or can engage in, then it's not really a great project. So it's looking at, have you done or are you aware of any statistical evidence or research others have done within that community you'll be supporting that shows that this activity is useful and supports their mental well-being? Have you consulted with people or groups that you're going to be working with about it? And have the people who will engage or take part in the activity or the project, have they collaborated you with on the design? Or have you delivered something similar before that was really well received by the community, or maybe it was well received, but actually there was changes that you made based on their feedback. So it's really looking for that, having that connection with your community. Question 4 is please explain how your project would help people to do at least 3 of the 5 ways to well-being. So you'd need to clearly state at least 3 out of the 5. I would say bullet point them, so actually write which ones they are and then expand on how that way of well-being is achieved for people taking part in your project. So make sure you cover at least 3 and it's really clear which ones they are and how it will be achieved. So for example, connect. The cookery sessions will allow people to build new social connections with other local people, or learn. People will learn a new crafting skill within the sessions. And you can expand on that a little bit. Be active. So the people attending will take part in physical activity or movement that makes them feel good. Notice is about being aware of the world around them and what they're feeling. And give is giving something to others. So whether that's volunteering or joining community groups or just carrying out a really simple, small act of kindness. I think I covered all 5 there. My my list repeats, so I hope I did. Um, Going back to learn as well, it can be trying something new, or it could be rediscovering an old interest, or it could be something that just makes people feel confident as well as having fun. Okay, on to question 5. So this is a tick list asking you which of the communities your project will benefit. So that's that list that I'd previously put up. So this would be really as much as you will be supporting multiple communities, because people don't fall into one, one single of those communities. They will cross over. Um, what I would say here is don't include all the possible communities that you would work with, but rather those that are the most relevant or the majority of your participants fall into, because the next question does ask you to explain and expand on that. So if you tick them all, you'd be expanding on all of them, whereas actually what we want to do is try and understand which are the main communities you work with. So on to the next question. For each community you've ticked, just let us know how many people you envisage will take part. So provide the total number. So within this activity, you expect 20 people to take part. And then you can break down that expected from those communities that you work with. So you could say, for example, you expect 20 people to take part overall. And of these 20 people, 10 will be men, all will be men, and 10 will be socially isolated and 10 will be carers. So as much as you're supporting 20 men within that group, from that, 10 of them will be older people who are socially isolated and 10 will be carers. So it's kind of just getting an idea of your overall numbers and the number within the community that you will be supporting. Next question. So for question 7, we're asking you to describe your past experience of working with the communities that you will participate in the project. Again, another reason that you don't want to just tick them all, because as much as people will fall into different groups, it's more around your experience of engaging and the experience of people taking part in your projects. So if you could just outline your experience and provide some small examples. Again, the word count, I've not written the word count down for this one, but I've got it somewhere. I think it's like 300 words. Question 7, yeah, it's 300 words. So it's not a massive amount. But actually, you were just looking for a couple of small examples of previous projects working with the communities you're expecting to take part in. And we just want to know that your project will be able to actually reach those communities that you're intending to work with. So it could be your previous GM Mental Wellbeing grant funded project, or it could be other work your organisation has done with other funding, or any contracts that you may have had to deliver mental wellbeing. We really want to know that your project will be able to reach and support that community. On to question 8. We are nearly done with the application form. So yeah, question 8 is asking about participation. So explaining how participation in your project would be encouraged. So how will people find out about the activity? Where will they come from? How will you encourage them to take part? Do you have any existing groups or contacts, or where will you advertise this? Will you advertise on social media or with leaflets in specific buildings? Have you got contacts with organisations that you know can provide some crossover of participants and you know, to funnel them in your direction and say, oh, actually, they're putting on this brilliant activity. It would be great for you. So it's things like that, thinking around how you will get people to attend, really, but also not just attend, but engage in that activity. And then the last question is question 9, which is how much are you applying for? So it's got to be a minimum of 1,000 really, but up to a maximum of 5,000. So we ask for just the total you're applying for and then a clear breakdown. So remembering that this must link really clearly to the project you've described in the first question. So for example, it could be that your breakdown would be a sessional worker for 10 hours at £15 per hour, £150, or room hire for 4 hours at £30 per hour, £120. So yeah, it's just, I think it gives you up to 5. The application form will give you 5 different breakdowns of amounts. So yeah, you can add a little bit of that breakdown there. So the grants can be used for a variety of purposes, which could include equipment, online solutions, printing, distribution, staff time and facilitators, but there has to be a project there, so it can't just solely be used for equipment, because you need to have those people coming along to that project and engaging, and the monitoring will involve those people as well. So we would expect that the application will reflect good value for money, which is always something that we get asked, what is good value for money? But I guess the panel have experience of interventions and well-being, and just having that idea of like room hire and what that would cost, or sessional workers, so we know that it will reflect good value for money within that. I was going to say something else on that and it's just gone out of my head. Yes, what I was going to say is, as far as is practical, if those amounts could be exact rather than estimates. For example, with room hire, I know a group last year guessed the amount of room hire based on the previous year that they delivered some activity in the space, and the cost had gone up. So it meant that once we got to delivery, they couldn't actually deliver the amount of sessions that they'd said, because room hire had gone up. So it caused a little bit of an issue there. So it's just trying to foresee that this year and think, actually, when was the last time we got this sessional worker in? Has their cost gone up? When was the last time we hired this room? Has that gone up? Do we need to change that amount? As far as is practical, we know that some things it may be an estimate or a best guess, but it is helpful if they are exact amounts, just in terms of the delivery of your project. Okay, so that's the application form. It's not too many questions. The word counts aren't too long, and we always try and ask questions that we need to know to be able to make decisions on what the best projects are to fund. And so in terms of any additional guidance, I would just be really mindful of clear and concise answers. So checking that word count in terms of a guide, but actually knowing that we're happy that it's less than that, as long as that answer is clear and concise and we understand clearly what your project is and that there's enough information for us to glean what that project is. So yeah, we'd expect it to reflect good value for money, and all activity must be completed by the end of May 2025. So it is quite a quick turnaround from us making the decisions, letting you know, and then project starting before the end of this year and then finishing at May 2025. So there will be a post questionnaire that will need to be completed with all your participants. So in previous years with the mental wellbeing grants, we have had a post questionnaire. We'll have a few additional questions in there. And the funders are really keen that they can see the changes, they can see the impact that the money that they're spending has. And as much as, we love case studies, and case studies really do show that, and the impact reports, they are also really wanting those figures to back that up as well. So yeah, that will be something that we'll send reminders as you go along. But it is something that will need to be completed. Next slide. So yeah, this is just how to apply on the online application. So if you go to the link on the website, the GM Mental Wellbeing Grants, and then there's a lot of information on there. You can complete the inquiry form, and then where that complete the inquiry form link takes you to, once you've completed and submitted it, you will get an email which will be the full application. So do check your inbox, including your spam and junk. It's usually really quick, so within an hour, if you've not had anything in and you've checked your junk, just drop us an email on the mental wellbeing, and we can double check what's going on with the system. Sometimes it's really simple things like you missed a letter out of your email address. Other times it's a system thing that we can push through. So yeah, that's the mental wellbeing inbox. Another thing to note is that we've always ran a micro and a faith grants round, so that will be running again this year as well. So they were up to £1,000. For the faith organisation, the income limit wasn't part of that. So you could apply for a project for up to £1,000. And yeah, we'll send more details out about that once that's all ready to go. But it will be later this year. So next slide, Vicky, please. Thank you. So the key dates are it's open now, opened on Tuesday. So you can click on the eligibility link and you will get your application form, and you can fill your application form in. When you're filling the application form in, you can't save it and go back to it. So we would suggest that you maybe type it out on a Word document and then copy and paste it over if you know that you're going to have to do it in more than one sitting. Yeah. And then the application form, the deadline for application forms is Tuesday, the 5th of November at midday. And the panel will meet in between that, from between Tuesday the 5th and Friday the 22nd, and we will be emailing decisions to you by Friday the 22nd of November. So you'll know fairly soon from that close date whether you've been successful or not. And grant agreements will be sent the week after, so that we can get you paid as soon as possible, and you can either start as soon as possible, or if you've got a January start, then you know that you've got enough time for that money to be there. We're usually pretty quick with payments, to be honest. So yeah, it'll all be there. The panel will be made up of GMCVO staff, the integrated care staff, and a lived experience member as well. So yeah, it's that kind of that key of thinking the person reading my application form might not know who I am. So as much as there's loads of names on the list today that I've recognised, and I know I've spoke to a few of you over the past couple of weeks about other grants rounds and different things going on within GMCVO, but it's just thinking it might not actually be somebody who knows you that's reading the application form, so we might not know. Yeah, it's just filling enough information in that somebody who doesn't know you would know what you're wanting to do with your project. And then the last slide, which I'll leave up for a little bit, but obviously will come round as well, is just our contact details. So the grants team is myself as a grants manager, Vicky, who's on the call today, she's our grants officer, and Kay, who is our project assistant. So when you email the mental wellbeing inbox, which is the best email inbox to email, to be fair, we monitor it as a team, and try and get back to you within 2 to 5 days. However, once we get sort of around grant time, we try and be a little bit quicker than that as well, because we realise that yeah, you need answers quickly to be able to put those application forms in. And that's the presentation.